All right. Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today I'm making a Thai noodle dish called Pad See Ew. For those who are not familiar, Pad See Ew is a rice noodle dish that relies very heavily on the use of chow fun and dark soy sauce, which we're going to take a look at today. Dark soy sauce, if you're wondering, it is not very similar to regular soy sauce, or at least not, in my opinion, very similar at all to regular soy sauce, mainly in the fact that it is a lot thicker and a lot sweeter than regular soy sauce. So I think of it as like a more concentrated and more sweetened version of regular soy sauce, so probably more similar to Japanese soy sauce, if anything. So if you're trying to use it as a substitute, I would say definitely don't try and do it in the same quantities, mainly because regular soy sauce is going to be a lot more similar to like a little bit more diluted. But if you can get your hands on dark soy sauce, I would say it is probably the single most important ingredient in this dish. So we're going to take a look at that today, and we're also going to deconstruct a couple of things that have gone wrong with some folks who have been following along with the recipe for this particular version of Pad See Ew. So if you're looking for that recipe, it all lives over on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Reddit, that would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen, right over here. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel you're already on. Over on YouTube, we have new recipes. Those are coming out every Friday. So last Friday, we came out with the recipe for chicken katsu came out last Friday. Friday before that, we did Taiwanese popcorn chicken. And a couple of months ago, we came out with a recipe for this particular Pad See Ew. So we're going to take a look at it and see how it ticks. I would also say that this is actually probably one of the more difficult recipes that have come out on that channel. So for those who have attempted it, I would definitely recommend not giving up. It's a really tough one. I have messed this recipe up at least 4 times before I actually figured out how to get the recipe to tick correctly. So yeah, if you're looking for those recipes though, that all lives over on my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/woocancook. Lots of fun stuff going on over there, including all of not only the written versions of all of these recipes, but also all of the long-form recipe videos. So in those videos, we kind of talk through some of the decision-making that goes behind some of my recipes, and why I do certain stuff, why I leave things out, stuff like that. So I'm going to take a look at it and kind of dive into some of this stuff. Oh yeah, you didn't notice it was good question, or a good point. Yeah, you didn't notice it was very sweet, but you got a much stronger salt flavor. Yeah, that's a good point that I should also mention. Dark soy sauce is very, very salty, so use it very, very sparingly. I don't think that I have ever used more than like 2 tablespoons of it in an entire recipe for like an entire 12 ounces or 8 ounces of rice noodles. So yeah, that stuff you got to use it really, really sparingly because it will for sure overtake an entire dish. If you're not careful about it. Cool. Delicious. Yeah, delicious. Yeah, totally. Thank you for tuning in. Am I using dried or fresh noodles? Oh yeah, good question. Today we're using fresh chow fun. So I have gone back and forth on doing a number of different kinds of noodles for this particular dish. By far the best thing that you can use is fresh chow fun. What's really tricky about fresh chow fun is that it is probably the least pantry friendly dish or noodle that I have ever worked with, maybe in existence, is chow fun. This stuff, it will go stale within less than 48 hours. I think probably by 24 hours it's probably stale. And it will start molding and probably go bad within 72 hours. So within 3 days of buying it, if you haven't eaten it yet, it's probably bad already. So it is very unstable as a pantry ingredient. So super often, if I forget to go to the grocery store, if I just haven't had a chance, I substitute it very often with dry rice noodles, which is the same thing that you use in pad thai a lot. Because those are really pantry stable. You could keep those in the pantry for pretty much forever, and it will be stable forever. But today I did actually remember to go out and buy the chow fun, so we have fresh chow fun, and we're going to dive into that. Part of what makes pad see ew such a difficult dish to tackle, though, is that chow fun is a really, really difficult ingredient to work with because it's so delicate and like so finicky. So there are a lot of different ways that working with chow fun can go south. And I have made almost all of those mistakes at one point or another. So yeah, we're going to take a look at all of that today. Oh yeah, gas stove burn. Yeah, one of your favorites. Yeah, totally. This is probably one of my favorite Thai noodle dishes too. I think I've probably had disastrous results at least 4 or 5 times before really like nailing down this dish. So chow fun, super, super delicate noodle. Okay, so starting things off, as with pretty much all of the savory dishes that I write, I'm starting things off with, this is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, and next what we're doing right now is a fine mince on about a tablespoon or maybe 1 inch's worth of ginger. So ginger is kind of hard to measure out because, especially in its solid form, because it has a very like uneven shape to the way that it grows. So super, super often when you come across ginger, it comes out like really, really knobby and just really uneven. So that makes it difficult to measure. Once it's minced, you can say, okay, we need about a tablespoon's worth, which is about what that is. But when it's in its solid form, so right before you start cutting it, it's very difficult to kind of like get a good grasp on like how much ginger you actually need. But once you're done, it should look something about like this. So we're looking for about a tablespoon's worth. But what's really tricky about ginger, so we could actually take a look, is that very, very often it will look something like this. So it has all of these weird nooks and crannies and knobs, which makes it really difficult to measure when it's still in its solid form. So what I like saying is about a tablespoon once it's minced, and before it's minced, usually about 1 inch's worth of ginger, depending on what's the shape of your ginger at that point. Cool. Next up, I've got some Thai chilies here, so I finally got my hands on some fresh Thai chilies. Thai chilies very, very pungent, so go easy on these. I'm going to use 6 of them. If you don't like spicy things, the first thing that you can do if you don't like particularly spicy dishes is you can just leave them out entirely. They are pretty spicy, so if you're not a big fan of spicy things, this is a big thing that you should probably leave out if you don't like spicy dishes. And I would actually say is that they're not actually super traditionally found in a pad see ew. I would say the kind of heat that you get from a Thai chili like this is actually more commonly found in pad kee mao or drunken noodles, which you more commonly find a Thai chili. But I actually think that it tastes really good, and I want the heat. So if you don't like heat, though, leave them out, or you could also just de-seed it, and that would achieve something pretty similar. Oh yeah, add total. Yeah, the spoon method. Yeah, so that's. I forget to point that out a lot because I do it on every single stream. But really, really useful tip if you're ever working with ginger is that you don't actually need to use a peeler for it, because the skin of ginger is really, really delicate. So it's super, super thin, which means that you could just pull it right off with the flat side of a spoon, which is useful for a couple of reasons. Number one, because ginger is really, really small. So if you've ever tried to work with a potato peeler and then like peeled the tip of your finger off, that's really, really painful. And you don't actually have to do that with ginger. The other tip or other useful thing about it is that since ginger has a lot of like fine nooks and crannies, the back of a spoon is a lot more like agile and more useful to get like the skin off of those little nooks and crannies. Alright, so I'm chopping up, this is 6 Thai chilies. You'll notice that I'm leaving all of the seeds in for mine. I want a little bit of heat in mine, but if you don't like heat, take those chili seeds out for sure. The other thing, I always forget to do this, and I also just don't care. But if you're being really diligent about capsaicin, probably wear gloves when you chop these, especially if you're not de-seeding it, because the capsaicin will stay on your hands. Even after washing your hands, it will stay on your hands. So that can be like really annoying, especially like if you try and go to the bathroom a couple hours later. Difference in taste or heat between the red and green ones. I have never noticed them. I have never noticed the difference. I mostly like to mix it up for the presentation because it's a nice difference in color. But I have not noticed any real difference in like flavor or taste. What the difference, the like actual difference between the red and the green ones, and this is like the same thing that applies to bell peppers, for example, is the red ones are more ripened, so it turns red as it ripens. The green ones are like less ripened, so they're pretty fresh. So I have never actually tasted the difference, but whatever the ripening qualities of it is. So with bell peppers, for example, as like when you eat a green bell pepper, if you've ever eaten a green bell pepper, they're pretty bitter because they're under ripened. And if you've ever eaten like a red or an orange bell pepper, they're a lot sweeter and more developed. So, but yeah, as far as Thai chilies go, I've never actually tasted the difference. They're both hot. Yeah, Hermina, yeah, how's it going? Oh, delicious! You use dry rice noodles. Yeah, I've definitely done this many times with dry rice noodles for sure, and it works out. The main thing that I notice when I use dry rice noodles is that the dry rice noodles they tend to they occupy a little bit more surface area. I've never had a problem with over seasoning because of the dry rice noodles, but I have come across the texture is a lot different. So. Usually, I guess that it depends on what kind of dry rice noodles you get. But usually when I work with dry rice noodles, those end up being a lot thicker. So it's kind of like the difference between fettuccine and angel hair, or fettuccine, yeah, where the noodles are a lot thicker. So you kind of have a different. It's kind of just a completely different thing. Where chow fun is a really really thin and delicate noodle. So yeah, super different. So that's actually the reason why I hate substituting dry noodles for fresh chow fun, is because it's just a completely different kind of noodle. But in a pinch, you could totally do it. Yeah. Oh, cool, Sarah. You went to a Vietnamese market. Ooh, that's cool. And you bought a variety. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess the only real Vietnamese noodle that I've had, or really worked with extensively, is vermicelli. But yeah, definitely, just like all other Asian noodles, especially the rice noodles, they're really really delicate, so we have to treat them very specifically. Yeah. Cool. Oh, do I grow my own produce? No, definitely not. I grow some stuff. I live in an apartment though, so I don't have a huge backyard. Pretty much the main things that I grow are just the green onions. So I put those in the ground and then grow new green onions. But you can also just grow that on a windowsill though, really. I just don't have enough real estate to grow much else. Oh, royalty. Yeah, the video is slightly behind that. I noticed that too. Is we have a slight video lag. I have tried my darndest to reduce that latency, but I honestly don't know what else to do to reduce that latency. At this point, it is what it is. I think that the YouTube stream has less lag, maybe. Yeah, the YouTube stream has less lag for sure. So yeah, if you are getting more latency on the Reddit stream, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. It'll work better. Cool. So right now I'm slicing up. This is some regular old plain old some plain old broccoli. I don't know why that was so hard to say. I love using regular broccoli for this, mainly because the more traditional thing that you would find in it is Chinese gailan, or Chinese broccoli. And I just really, really dislike gailan. If you like gailan, or if you've never had it, definitely try and experiment with it. But I've also found I grew up eating gailan a lot, and I just don't like it. I just find it really, really bitter. And it was just honestly one of those veggies that I just sort of choked down a lot when I was a kid. So I might have just weird childhood associations with gailan. But since we're not working with gailan, we're working with regular broccoli. Very specifically, the main thing that we want to do about this broccoli, since it's not gailan, is chop it very specifically, because we're going to be wok frying this broccoli today. So most often when you work with broccoli like this, you will see it par cooked. So super often, and probably in most American cooking, and actually pretty much all cuisine where I've seen the use of broccoli like this. you would probably par cook it. So you would either do like a steam, sometimes you would boil it, anything to like sort of cut through the like really thick and like sturdy qualities of the broccoli. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard to cook through it in a regular wok fry. So in order to make sure, since we're not going to be doing a par cook today, in order to make sure that it's actually edible, otherwise sometimes it will end up just like too chewy or too hard or even just raw still, we have to cut it really thinly. So you'll notice that each of my pieces of broccoli are really thin, pretty much like the general shape and size of what a gailan looks like, which is long, thin, and just kind of has like a little bit of floret on the top. So we need those to be pretty small and thin in order to make sure that they cook properly in the wok. Is that also known as bok choy? No, so bok choy is a different veggie, which we can take a look at too, actually. Bok choy looks more like this. This is actually baby bok choy, so full-grown bok choy is a little bit larger. And it has a different kind of flour on it, so this is like more of a leafy. I would like compare bok choy more similarly to like lettuce or maybe even cabbage, because it has this like kind of leafy green to it, with like a little bit of like a crunchy bottom to it. So kind of similar to cabbage, I guess. But yeah, definitely pretty different from gailan or broccoli. Oh, if you're on Royalty, if you're on OBS, you can add a slight delay to the video. I will definitely experiment with that. I did not know that you can do that. Just try and figure that out. What's really tricky about debugging this stuff is that the only real way that you can debug it is while you're live. Because the only other way that you're going to have a chance to kind of debug this stuff is to turn the thing on. So I'll take a look at that. That's a really good tip, though. But thank you for that. All right, so I'm washing my broccoli, and that's going to be about it. Mostly, the most important thing after you wash this broccoli, the same reason that we have it in a strainer, is because we want to shake out all of this water. So the broccoli needs to be pretty dry before it ends up in our wok. And this is going to be true anytime that you work with veggies that are going into a wok, is that if you leave this water in, what will happen eventually is that it's going to start dropping the temperature of the wok, and then you're going to end up with a really soggy stir fry. So if you've ever had wok stir fries that are kind of like mushy, that comes from too much like liquid entering the wok, and that's causing poor heat retention. Yeah. And the potato girl, yeah. Today, hello to everyone just tuning in. I guess I should keep introducing myself. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai noodle dish called pad see ew. Pad see ew, if you're here in the States, is pretty common. Probably like the second most popular noodle dish, second to like pad Thai. It looks like a number of different ways, depending on like where you get it. But more like generally, the way that you would find pad Thai or pad see ew here in the States has the use of chow fun, which is like wide, thin rice noodles, plus some kind of protein, usually chicken, and then usually, or like most traditionally, you would find it with Chinese broccoli, so gailan. Today, we're going to be subbing that gailan with regular old broccoli, so plain broccoli that you can get anywhere in the States. You can generally find broccoli. So, yeah. If you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about pad see ew, but I know lots of stuff, so hopefully I can be helpful or informative. If you're looking for the recipes, as with pretty much everything that I cook on stream, those recipes, they always live over on my YouTube channel, which if you're watching on Reddit is the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel that you're already on, but that would be youtube.com/woocancook. Lots of fun stuff going on over there. Over on the YouTube channel, there's new recipes. Those come out every Friday. So last Friday we came out with, I don't know why I keep forgetting this. Chicken katsu. We came out with chicken katsu last Friday. And there's a couple of series that are in progress over on that channel. This pad see ew was part of a larger series that I've been doing, where I've been reproducing a lot of food from the like Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area restaurant scene. So this one comes from a restaurant in Oakland called Nicha Thai. And that's just like generally been a fun way of like paying homage to a lot of the super popular restaurants here in the Bay Area. So if you're looking for stuff like that, lots of fun content living over on the YouTube channel. Those recipes, they're out every Friday. So if you haven't checked that out yet, definitely go and check it out. We're working our way to 2,700 subscribers by the end of the month. I think we're shy by like 10 subscribers at this point. But if you want to help us hit that subscriber goal, hop over to the YouTubes and go and subscribe. Lots of fun stuff. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's wash this off. Yeah, oh yeah, lots of questions. Oh, Charles, which artists have inspired my music? Yeah. Probably like the Woo Cooks Beat stuff, it's all like more like in the realm of like lo-fi and like lo-fi R&B. So that's like a lot of like D'Angelo, a lot of Questlove. I listen to a lot of Roots, a lot of that neo soul stuff. Lately I've been really into, what have I been listening to lately? Yeah, I get. Oh yeah, the new the old Erykah Badu. I guess that's not new. I've been listening to a lot of Erykah Badu lately, so a lot of neo soul. I think that's probably where it comes from. So then, how much would it cost to hire me as a private chef? I don't know. That's a good question. If you're ever in the Bay Area, let's definitely talk. That sounds cool. Antiquated ways. How long have I had the wok for? Oh yeah, the wok. We can take a look at the wok. This is my wok, and I should probably start preheating it. It's made out of carbon steel. I've had it for about a year now. I think just shy of a year. And it has. It's not about how long I've had it. It's about how often I cook on it, and I cook on it like 5-6 times a week. So that I think is why it has such a deep seasoning on it. Is because I use it so often. I think I probably cook on it at least once a day. So sometimes more than that. So that's anytime that you get something that's made out of carbon steel, that's how it like kind of develops that seasoning, is just by using it a whole lot. So the Soulquarians, yeah, that's good stuff. I saw that there's a really cool new record that Pino Palladino did, which is, I forget who it's by, but it's with him, and I think it has Robert Glasper on it, and it's pretty dope. It's just like weird, like almost like acid jazz stuff. Like it's pretty out of this world. And I also saw that D'Angelo did like a kind of a covert release where he like released the whole album on Instagram, I think. So those guys are up to weird shit. All right, so next up, we're working on our chicken thigh right now. In the original recipe, I think I had called for chicken breast. You could use either one's gonna work. I've done it with both, and they pretty much turns out the same. If you happen to have both on hand, I like using chicken thigh because it has a little bit more fat. And anytime that I'm working with a recipe that's noticeably low on like animal fat or like thickness or richness, I like using a little bit more of fat. So in the original recipe, I'm pretty sure that I had used chicken breast. But lately I've been leaning more towards chicken thigh just because it's going to render out a little bit more fat for our wok fry. And that's going to give us like a little bit more thick and cohesive sauce. So for our marinade, this is actually kind of a complex marinade. This is going to be 4 tablespoons of soy sauce. By the way, if you're following the original recipe, I think in the original recipe I had specified 4 tablespoons of low sodium soy sauce. So right now I'm actually using, this is full sodium soy sauce. And I'm gonna see what happens. Usually in marinades it works out fine. So, but yeah, definitely if you're working with full sodium soy sauce, I would say anytime that I say work with soy sauce, if you're using full sodium soy sauce, cut the amount of soy sauce in half. But in this case, I'm gonna just try using all of it, see what happens. All right, next up is 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine, which is a Chinese cooking wine. If you can't get your hands on Shaoxing wine, it's basically just dry cooking sherry, which if you're in the States, you could definitely find a little bit more easily. If you can find it though, Shaoxing wine is gonna be cheaper than dry cooking sherry. I think I got this bottle of Shaoxing wine for like $2. So, and dry cooking sherry will definitely cost you at least $10, depending on like how good of the sherry it is. Cool. Let's see. pepper. Yeah, that's it. So let's move on. So next up is going to be a single teaspoon, not a tablespoon, a single teaspoon of white pepper, and I'm actually going to cut that in half. So this is going to be half a teaspoon of white pepper. And finally, this is going to be a 1/4 teaspoon of cornstarch. So we want to go easy on the cornstarch at this point, because if you add too much of it, it will end up in your wok fry, and it's going to start like causing like mushy qualities to the stir fry. But I have found that if you add a little bit of cornstarch to your meat marinades, is that it kind of coats the chicken and meats a little bit, and then slows down the cooking process on the exterior of the meat. What that's going to do is it's going to prevent the chicken from overcooking. So I use it a lot anytime that I work with chicken. Super often when I work with steaks, so like in Mongolian beef, for example. All really good opportunities to involve a little bit of cornstarch, just to slow down the exterior cooking. Super common to use it in scrambled eggs, anytime that you're wok frying eggs. Just so that it avoids everything from turning rubbery before the inside of the piece of meat or egg can finish cooking. So that's our, one more thing. The last thing going into our marinade is going to be a single star anise pod. Star anise pod, it's not edible, but it has quite a bit of like licorice qualities to it. And I generally associate it anytime that I'm working in Thai food, actually, when I'm using a star anise pod. What I get out of it is like all of the qualities that I very often would associate with Thai basil. So if you have Thai basil, you could also just use Thai basil at this point. But super often I'll use a star anise pod, mostly because it comes from the pantry, so I don't have to remember to buy it. But also because it kind of has that like licorice quality that you get from fresh Thai basil. So super often I use it in marinades. Sometimes I'll even use it in stews, or even just like sauce bases. But it's not edible, so make sure that you pick that stuff out first before you start eating. Oh, you have the same water bottle. Yeah, this one. I don't know where I got this from. It's just a... I think it's called Swell. Yeah. Alpacasaurus. Oh, did I buy the blade pre-made? Yeah, I definitely did not make it. I'm not a knife maker. This is a French chef's knife. It's made by a brand called Père Noir Nogent. I'm pretty sure it's not in production anymore. This is a vintage knife. If you're looking for something similar, though, there is a more popular and more famous chef's knife called a Sabatier. And the Sabatier is definitely still in production, and it has the very similar like knife profile, so it's super thin and long. Oh, delicious. I'm sorry, I meant to use the regular tablespoons, I forgot. But yes, I did actually measure it out, though. So relative to the actual tablespoons, so we could take a look. So they look different, but when you compare them, I'm not going to be able to show this on camera. You won't be able to see it. But the spoons that I use versus the actual tablespoons, the tablespoons are actually smaller. So this is actually slightly less than a tablespoon. So it's like probably like a gram less than the tablespoon. So it's right in the like ballpark of similar. But if anything, it's actually, by using these spoons, it's going to end up being under seasoned. So I will remember to use these for the sauce, though, which we'll do right now. Cool. So next up is our sauce base. So this is going to be where all of the flavor from our sauce mix comes from. So I'm using, this is going to be 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, followed by 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce. And I mentioned this earlier, but dark soy sauce is very thick and very concentrated. So I don't think I have ever used more than 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce in any single recipe. So go easy on the stuff when you do use it. All right, next up is some black vinegar. Just like black vinegar is similar to rice vinegar. I would say is most similar to rice vinegar, but has a little bit more of a malted sweetness to it. So it has like a little bit of sugar to it. Those three ingredients which we just added, though, are probably the three big ingredients that are going to give our noodles that signature color. So pad see ew has this very signature like dark brown stained color, which is why you will frequently see it called like fried soy sauce noodles, because it has that dark brown color to it. So the reason that we're using those three ingredients is not just for the flavor of it, but it's actually coming from the quality of like color. So in order to get that really, really dark brown stained color to those noodles, that's going to be really, really important. And the last thing in that realm of color that we're going to add is going to be 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. Yeah, the camera makes the spoon, yeah, it kind of distorts the image a little bit. I think it's clear on YouTube because the screen is a little bit bigger, but it's definitely distorted more on Reddit for sure. All right. Let's see. Next up, in my personal opinion, I think this is probably the single most important ingredient to like almost all Thai food, is fish sauce. So very, very important ingredient. We're going to use, this is going to be 4 tablespoons of fish sauce. So that seems like a lot of fish sauce, but I actually think that it's necessary because it's that critical of an ingredient. I think like that really, really fishy umami and like fermented quality that you get out of like pretty much all Thai noodle dishes. So pad Thai, pad see ew, pad keema, all of those things. Even some of those curry dishes, it all is coming from fish sauce. So lots of people think that it's coming from other stuff like soy sauce, but it's actually the fish sauce. So it's super, super important. The big source of fermentation is coming from that fish sauce. And then the very last thing that I'm adding here is going to be 2 tablespoons of sambal olek. Sambal olek, I guess you could call it like fermented chili sauce, something like that. It's in the realm of like the more common Asian spices, and I have experimented with a whole bunch of different spices for this particular recipe. I have worked with gochujang. I've tried it with doubanjiang too. But ultimately, I found that like that sambal olek, it's really, really iconic to the flavor of Thai food, and it's probably the one case where I love using sambal olek over anything else because it's really, really iconic to the flavor. Last thing that we want to do is season it to taste. So taste it and adjust if it needs something, add it. So mine needs a little bit of salt, I'm noticing, so I'm going to add that. And that's it. So that's our sauce. Done cutting? I think we're done cutting. So I'm probably going to I'll remember to say this later too, but super, super important that when we do get to this in our wok fry, you'll notice that there's quite a bit of sauce in here. So this is probably almost a whole cup of sauce. I don't always use all of it. Sometimes I use like less, like half of it. Sometimes there's like almost a half a bowl left of sauce. So super, super important. Don't just drop this into the wok. Add half, add a quarter of it sometimes, and then look, does it need more? If it needs more, then keep adding it. If it doesn't need all of it, don't add it. It's not a big deal if you dump out parts of it. We're not wasting that much soy sauce. Just make sure that in order to avoid over seasoning, don't just dump it all in. Pay attention. What does the noodles look like? Is it over sauced yet? Is it getting too dark? Are you like over seasoning? This is going to be true for any wok fry. Is stop and give it a toss and check it out. Is it getting too thick? Is it getting too dark? Is it getting too salty? Then stop. Yeah. Danke. Did I just say danke? I don't know. I do say danke a lot though. All right. Oops. This is just 2 eggs. These eggs are gonna come up very, very last. You will very frequently find the use of eggs in Thai noodle dishes. And you will most often see them added really, really late, so like near the end of the stir fry. And that's so that we can coat the noodles in those eggs, so we don't add them. If you add them super, super early, that's more similar to how you would approach eggs in a rice, like fried rice, for example, where we add them really, really early, and then we achieve these nice like egg curds. What I love doing when I work with Thai noodle dishes is add them really, really late. So it'll probably be the very last thing that I add. And that kind of gives our noodles like a coating. So it's that quality of like rice noodles that are coated in egg that you'll probably associate with Thai noodles. Cool. All right, so last up before we move over to the stove, I'm going to measure out my chow fun. So this is probably the single most tricky thing about this dish is chow fun, because, and I'm going to show you why it's so tricky. But the main reason that makes chow fun so tricky is because chow fun is crazy delicate because it's so thin. It's also what makes it so delicious is the fact that it's so thin. So it's like really, really delicate and really tasty because it's so thin. But because it's so thin, that's also part of what makes it so hard to work with. So we want to be very careful when we unravel these noodles to make sure that they're not clumping up. So fresh chow fun has a quality about it. When you find it, or when you buy it, you'll notice that my hands are very, very oily right now. That's because chow fun, when it's fresh chow fun, when it's packaged, is packaged in oil. So that's to make sure that it doesn't clump up. You'll even notice right now, so I bought this chow fun is from the market that I bought today. But even now it's still starting to clump up already and probably going a little bit stale because it's almost 24 hours old. So super, super important when we work with chow fun. Don't just drop this stuff straight into the wok. Break it apart first and make sure that it's not going to clump up the way that it's sort of clumping up right now. If you just drop it into the wok, sometimes it will work. It depends on how fresh your chow fun is. But if your chow fun is particularly old or stale, it will absolutely clump up, and then you'll have like clumps of rice noodle, which I have also done. That's also a mistake that I have made. Yeah. The other thing that I've come across is that if you notice that your chow fun has gone bad or has gone stale, and it's not breaking apart like it is right now for me, you can pop it in the microwave and then microwave it for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And then it will start loosening up once it's warm. So I'm breaking up. This is going to be 12 ounces of chow fun. And then we're just really what I'm trying to do is making sure that we don't have like any clumps. So most of the time, probably this would break apart in the wok fry since it's not really stale. But to be really, really careful, though, we want to make sure that these noodles like this are broken apart so that when we drop it into our wok, it's not going to be all clumped up. And then we're going to have a bad time. Yeah. Oh, how can you open eggs with one hand? A lot of practice. It's also not that important in a kitchen skill. But yeah, just lots of practice. It was just one of those things that I learned from making breakfast in the morning so often that eventually I just figured it out. But essentially what you're doing is holding those each half of the egg in one finger. So I don't think it's that important of a skill. I'd say like more important to like learn good knife technique before you learn how to crack an egg with one hand. I also think that it's part of the reason why I drop eggshells into my eggs all the time. It's because I crack eggs one-handed too often. And when I'm trying to be really, really careful, I generally like crack it two hands to make sure that we don't drop shells in. All right, so that's our 12 ounces of chow fun. And then I'm going to set that aside, and then we're going to start cooking. I think we're done. I think we're ready to start cooking. So this is our chow fun. We're going to start throwing stuff into the wok and get things going next. So I'm heating up my wok here. We want this thing ripping hot before we start cooking on it. It has to be as hot as you can possibly get that wok. So before you get going, make sure that that thing is ripping hot. Do a little bit more chow fun here. Generally, it depends on how thick your wok is, and I guess like what kind of wok that you have. But generally, my wok takes about like a minute, maybe a minute and a half before it's ready to go. If you're not sure if your wok is hot enough yet, what we're looking for is a lot of smoke. So once that thing starts smoking and like really, really smoking up, that's when we know we're ready to start cooking. But if you don't see that smoke yet, that means that your wok is probably not hot enough yet. Cool. Yeah. All right, hello to everyone just tuning in. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. With new recipes, those are coming up over on the YouTube channel every Friday. So every Friday over on that channel, there's a brand new recipe. Usually the things that we're cooking on stream are probably cooking through something that I've done a recipe video for. So this particular pad see ew is a recipe that came out on the channel, I think like a month or 2 months ago, a little while ago. And it was part of a series that I've been doing where I've been hacking a lot of foods from the San Francisco Bay Area restaurant scene. So this particular pad see ew comes from a restaurant in Oakland called Nicha Thai. Yeah, it is smoking and we're about ready to go. Lots of fun stuff going on in that series. I've been like making my way through all of my favorite restaurants in like Oakland, Chinatown lately. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube and check out what's going on over there. There's a really fun series that lots of people have been really into, which is a series where I've been deconstructing a lot of Chinese food, or like Chinese American foods more specifically, so things like Panda Express, PF Chang's, things like that, and kind of taking a look at like what makes like a dish like General Tso's chicken or something like that kind of tick, and like what makes those things work. So like what makes Chinese American food so American, and then how do we try and like reconstruct those things in like the Chinese, like traditional Chinese approach. So what would it look like if we were to do General Tso's chicken, but from the perspective of someone who actually is cooking like traditional Chinese food. So stuff like that all lives over on the YouTube channel. If you're interested, hop over and check some of that stuff out. Lots of fun content going on over there. It's smoking, yeah. Oh yeah, you wish you could smell it. Yeah. Usually it doesn't smell like much, especially right now. We're about to start adding Thai chilies to the wok. You generally don't want to be around when you add Thai chilies to a wok because it's going to start smoking capsaicin, and I will almost certainly start coughing. So yeah, it's smoking. Cool. But yeah, so that's the YouTube channel. If you haven't checked that out yet, we're working our way to 2,700 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you want to help us hit the subscriber goal, definitely hop over and give that thing a subscribe. Lots of fun stuff coming up. I think the next thing coming up this Friday is going to be beef chow fun, which I'm super excited for, which is another, probably, I think only the second recipe that I've really started working with chow fun on. So lots of fun stuff like that coming up soon. All right, so first up, we're going to start off with our aromatics, and then we're going to cook up our chicken next. So into my wok, this is peanut oil. I finally remembered to get new peanut oil. And then we're going to give our wok a long yao, which is essentially giving it a nice coating to make sure that it is nice and non-stick. And then I'm starting off with, this is my ginger, followed by my garlic. And then I'm going to let that go for long enough until it becomes fragrant. So use your nose at this point. For me, that's usually about 10-15 seconds. It depends on how hot the wok is. But start using your nose at this point. When you start smelling ginger and garlic, you know you're ready to move on. Yeah. Cool. Next up is my chicken. So very important, well, not super important, but do your best to hold back as much of the liquid of the marinade as possible. And that's for the specific reason that we're trying to reduce the moisture in the wok at this point. So the more moisture that ends up in the wok, the lower or quicker the temperature of the wok is going to start dropping, and then you're going to start running into problems with keeping the wok hot. So especially if you're working with chicken thigh like I am, that's going to shed off a lot of fat, which is going to turn into moisture. So I have, that ended up being about a tablespoon or so of our marinade. It's not super critical, but do your best to make sure that stuff doesn't end up in the wok. And right off the bat, you'll notice that our cornstarch is doing quite a bit of work for us here. So you'll notice that the chicken is not cooking nearly as fast as it would if it were not coated in cornstarch. So if there wasn't cornstarch in our marinade, it would probably be browned on the outside already, while the inside of the chicken probably would not be cooked yet. So without that cornstarch, we will probably end up with overcooked chicken. But you'll notice that it's actually cooking quite a bit slower instead, and that's because that nice coating of cornstarch is preventing things from overcooking on the exterior. All right, so I'm gonna let that go. That will probably go for maybe 2 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. We don't need it to be all the way cooked through, but we do want the majority of our cook time to be done at this point. And then we're gonna pull it out, and then we're gonna employ something called batch cooking that's super, super common in a lot of home-cooked wok frying, in which we're gonna cook certain ingredients, then remove it, and then cook our next ingredient. And that's going to keep that wok nice and hot, because at no point will everything be in the wok until the very, very end. Yeah. Medium rare chicken. Yeah, someone asked about that yesterday too. There's no such thing as medium rare chicken. If you're eating chicken, it's either it's cooked or it's not cooked. So if you're eating medium rare chicken, you're very much in the world of like, you might end up giving yourself food poisoning. So yeah, definitely, that was funny. Someone asked about that yesterday too. If you're going for medium rare chicken, that's not you're probably gonna give yourself food poisoning. Ooh, good question. Hermita, do Asians prefer more savory cooking or sweet cooking? I think it's both. But definitely, like a lot of the Chinese food that I find in America, like especially like Chinese American cuisine, like really classic Chinese American cuisine, is super, super sweet in ways that I have never come across in like actual Chinese food. So things like General Tso's chicken, honey sesame chicken, all of those things, they contain a huge amount of, oftentimes it's just straight up sugar, sometimes it's honey. Those are things that I have never actually come across in traditional Chinese food. So all of those really, really like sweet, savory Chinese dishes like General Tso's chicken, kung pao, honey sesame chicken, all of those things. Those are not things in actual Chinese food. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question, but definitely like in traditional Chinese food, you wouldn't find that as much, quite as much sweetness and sugar. All right. So I just removed my chicken from my wok, and next up what we're going to do is reheat that wok and then add our next ingredient. So this part is really, really important if you're new to cooking on a wok on a home range, is that you have to pull things out of it. So if we just kept going, we have a couple more things that need to be cooked. So first off, we have to cook off our broccoli, so that's going to be really, really important. We also have to bloom out our Thai chilies. So in order for us to cook those things properly, that wok needs to be ripping hot. And if we tried to do that with the chicken still in the wok, you wouldn't have enough heat in the wok because there would be too many things in the wok, so the wok would start dropping in temperature. So to make sure that it's still really, really hot, we have to pull stuff out. So I'm removing the chicken, reheating, and then I'm going to do my broccoli next. So at no point, the only point in time where everything is going to be in my wok is going to be at the very, very end when I add everything to the wok. And at that point, we're really just going to toss to combine. So by batch cooking in like certain elements one at a time, that ensures that everything is cooked on extremely high heat. So if you are in a restaurant, super, super often, they will definitely not have to use batch cooking because in those restaurants, they have really, really hot burners, and those burners are going way hotter than anything that you would be able to achieve on a home range. Yeah. Are there any things in Chinese cuisine that are naturally sweetened? I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. I can't think of anything off the top. Probably, or red bean paste, that's a really good one. Red bean paste for sure. And that's the stuff that you find in like mochi. Mochi is technically Japanese. But it's in a lot of like Chinese desserts. Zhongzi, it's in a lot of zhongzi. And that stuff is naturally sweet, I think. Pretty sure red bean is naturally sweetened. I've never had like not sweet red bean. All right, so we're gonna do the exact same thing again. So this is peanut oil, about 4 tablespoons. Give it one more long yao. And then I'm adding my Thai chilies, so super important. I'm even going to turn on my second blower. When you add those Thai chilies, they're going to start smoking up and kicking off all of their capsaicin. So super important. Make sure your windows are open at this point because they will start smoking up, and that smoke is really caustic. So I'm probably pretty confident. I'm probably going to start coughing. Every time that I use Thai chilies, I start coughing. But before you add yours, make sure that you open those windows, otherwise you're gonna give yourself a coughing fit. It got me. All right, next up is my broccoli. Oh yeah, it got me. And I mentioned this earlier too, but super important. That our broccoli is cut really thin, and that's going to make sure that it cooks and flash cooks properly. If we just threw like large chunks of broccoli florets into a wok fry like this, it would probably not cook properly, and then we would have like raw bits of broccoli going on. So I'm gonna give that about 2 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that, and that's going to do most of what we're looking for is just cooking off some of the rawness of that broccoli. To make sure that we don't have like a really crunchy, like an inedible broccoli. Broccoli is basically inedible when it's raw because it's very tough. That's why it's par cooked so often. So really what we're after is just kind of cooking off a little bit of that toughness. And then once we have that toughness cooked off, we can add everything back to the wok. Yeah. Bitter melon, super sweet, yeah, totally. Cover with 2100, how's it going? Yeah, I haven't seen you that in a while. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you tuning in all the time. Yeah, oyster sauce definitely. That oyster sauce has a natural sweetness to it for sure. But a lot of the things that we're using today, they have sweetness to it, but it's artificially sweetened. So dark soy sauce, black vinegar, both of those are sweet, but they're not naturally sweet. They come from artificial sweetness. I think both of them are done with molasses or cornstarch. I forget. Maybe both. All right, I'm adding my chicken back to the wok at this point. And you'll notice, so a couple of things are about to start happening. So first off, you could hear it. There's lots of sizzling going on in my wok at this point. And then the next thing that's going to happen is as soon as all of that moisture starts cooking off, is we're going to lose all of that sizzling as soon as we add other things to the wok too. And that's a sign that you're losing heat. So if at any point you hear this happen and you're not almost done cooking, it's a big problem. But for our case, since we're basically done cooking, it's okay to start losing heat at this point because there's nothing else to cook. Everything has already been cooked at this point. So really at this point, we're just combining things. All right, so there's two things left to add. One of them is our sauce. So I'm going to start with our eggs before we get to our sauce. And we're adding these eggs in very last because our goal here is not to have egg curds. What we're trying to do is coat our egg noodles in that egg so that we end up with like nice egg-coated noodles. If we add them any earlier, like you would do in a fried rice, for example, you would end up with egg curds. So you would have nice scrambled eggs floating throughout your fried rice or fried noodles in this case. And the last thing that we're going to add is our sauce next. So I'm going to start with, that was maybe 1/4 cup, maybe a little bit more than that. And then gradually add more. This definitely does not need all of it. And that should do it. So that's it. I'm going to let these eggs set a little bit longer before I pull it out of the heat. But a couple of people have been asking about this, so really quick we could take a look. I definitely did not use all of the sauce, so this is what remains in our sauce mix. This is about, I think, maybe a quarter cup or so. So there's probably about 80% of the sauce that actually ended up in the woks, and the last 20% or so is actually not ending up in the wok at all. So super important at this point. Don't just dump that stuff in. Make sure that you're paying attention and adjust. Too much sauce is impossible, yeah. Good point. Cool. Alright, so I'm removing everything from my wok, and the last thing that we want to do when we finish cooking, I say this at the end of every cook, is clean that wok. So super important. While your wok is hot, it has a non-stick surface. It's especially important when you're working with eggs, because it will definitely have a quality about it that's going to want to stick to the wok. But while it's non-stick, you'll notice, so I just gave it a rinse, and our wok is pretty much clean. So I think there's a little bit of egg left behind here. But for the most part, everything just came off. So super important. While it's hot, make sure that you give it a rinse to get all of that stuff off. So if you don't remember to rinse it while it's hot, what you're going to end up with is a very like sticky wok that has a bunch of food stuck behind. So if you try and like sit down and eat first, super tempting to do because there's food in front of you and you want to eat it. That's a bad sign, because you're going to have to start doing things in a wok that you don't want to be doing, like scrubbing and using Brillo pads and steel wool, all of those things. They'll generally be okay if you use it a little bit, but for the most part you want to try and avoid doing that, because you're going to eventually scrub off the seasoning of your wok. So I gave that was probably 2 rinses. And then I'm adding, this is going to be maybe a teaspoon of oil. And just like you do with a cast iron, we're going to coat everything in a little bit of oil. That's going to prevent anything from carbonizing. And that's it. Cool. Alright. Grant from Mythbusters, yeah. He died recently. That's really one of the more tragic losses of 2020, I think. I think that was in 2020. That guy is like an Asian American hero. All right. So let's give this a taste. Ooh, yeah, that's really good. That chicken came out really good too. It's nice and tender. Last thing that I'm gonna do, I forgot to do this earlier, but I have fresh lime, so we're gonna chop up some lime wedges actually. I have half a lime already. I'm not sure if the original recipe calls for lime, but I love lime and patsy. Yeah. Oh, lots of questions. Yeah, good to clean right away. The food is too hot anyway. Yeah, you probably want to let it cool down anyway, unless you want to burn the crap out of your mouth. Or a sesame seed. Not in a pad see ew. Sometimes you can if you want. There's no harm in it. Sesame seed doesn't really taste like anything. It's mostly just for texture. But in a pad see ew, I don't think it's super traditional to add a sesame seed to a pad see ew. But yeah, you can if you want. Ooh, yeah. This is when the face mask comes in handy. Yeah, I guess I could wear an N95 while I do Thai chilies. Yeah, Patrick, yeah, holding back some of the sauce is definitely one of the big keys. Oh, delicious! Yeah. So you think the noodles weren't fully cooked when you soaked them in the water? Yeah, that's definitely both. So delicious and Patrick, those are both things that are like two of the what makes this dish so freaking tricky is because those noodles are. Chow fun is stupid delicate. Like it is easily one of the hardest ingredients that I have ever worked with because it's so thin and just so finicky and like. There are so many ways that it can go south. It could clump up. It could start molding. It could break in the water. It can get too oily if you don't do it correctly. If you don't set it apart, it will start getting into like really big chunks. The best luck that I've ever had with chow fun is when I like literally buy it at the market and then come home and then cook it. Otherwise, you're all gonna run into all kinds of problems. Even like just now, this is chow fun that I brought like 4 or 5 hours ago, and even then it's like a little bit, it's like right on the cusp of starting to go stale. So it's super finicky and difficult to work with. Probably like the number one thing that we want to do is definitely don't use all of that sauce. Make sure that you don't just dump it in. Sometimes there has been cases where I actually have used all of it, but keep an eye on it. If you don't think that you need all of the sauce, definitely just don't toss it in all in. But the number 2 thing that we want to pay attention to is probably, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in the original video, but pull those chow fun noodles apart. Don't just throw those chow fun straight into the wok. Pull it apart first and make sure that it's going to break apart properly. And I have definitely done this on many occasions where I didn't pull it apart and the noodles ended up being a little bit stale, and then nothing happened. It just like a big block of rice noodles ended up in the wok. So all kinds of things that can go south if you're using fresh chow fun, and any one of those things can totally just destroy the dish. So I think it has a combination to do with like the broccoli, how like durable and like stiff the broccoli is, how quickly that chicken thigh or chicken breast can overcook, and just like how delicate chow fun is. So all 3 of those things are like easily what makes this dish so freaking hard, like deceptively hard. Because it kind of just, pad see ew kind of just looks like you just throw stuff into the wok and then you get noodles out of it. But what's really difficult about it is that the qualities of each ingredient are drastically different in how they're prepared and like used. So you have to treat them very specifically. Otherwise, if you just dump stuff into the wok, you're going to end up with like a big clump of rice noodle, which I have done. I'm not exaggerating. I have messed this dish up at least 6 times. I've definitely messed it up on stream at least twice. So it is super frustrating, but really rewarding because chow fun is so delicious. Yeah. Lots of debit cards. That's a great username. Yeah, chopsticks. I don't use chopsticks properly. The correct way to use chopsticks is like a pencil. So if you're writing with a pencil, you want to hold it like you would, like this is how normal people use a pencil, and then you hold that pencil with your thumb. And then hold the second chopstick up here with your index finger, so like so. And this is how most people use a chopstick. What's tricky is that I actually don't use a pencil like normal people, so I write like this down on my ring finger. And then what I like doing, since that's just the way that I use a pencil, is holding the chopstick up here. And then usually what I end up doing is actually just holding it clamped in my hand like this, and then operating it with this finger. But definitely, someone asked about this earlier too. The number 1 thing that I mention about chopsticks anytime people ask about chopsticks is that whenever you see a Chinese person eating with chopsticks, what makes it like so easy to eat with chopsticks is the same reason why Chinese people use rice bowls. Is you have to be able to pick the bowl up. If you can't pick the bowl up, you can't shovel stuff into your mouth. And without that shoveling ability, so usually you'll see a Chinese person eating like this. and that's how you would generally eat Chinese food. If you can't do that, it's going to take super, super long to eat. So if you've ever been to like a Chinese restaurant and you see like people putting stuff on the plate first, usually I see white people do this a lot, where they'll put stuff on the flat plate and then try and eat it from the flat plate. You're going to have a hell of a time doing that because you can't pick the plate up unless you want to be like a barbarian and pick up the plate and shovel stuff from the plate into your mouth. It's going to take you forever, and some of it you just won't be able to eat. Don't know how people achieve eating rice off of a flat plate with chopsticks. That's like impossible. So, yeah, good question though. Someone asked that earlier in an earlier stream too. Yeah. Ooh, have I ever made ramen? I have toyed around with making ramen. I want to get better at it before I do a recipe for it. Ramen is really tricky. Not because it's hard to make. Ramen broth is really, really hard. So like dashi broth, I'm working on making a good dashi broth right now, which I'm going to do for a chicken katsudon. And once I figure out how to make a good ramen broth, then I'll try and tackle making some ramen. But ramen is real scary. You can mess up ramen really hard. So it's not just like broth plus soup plus ramen noodles and you get basically top ramen but fancy. There's so many nuances to it that like just like noodle soups in general are really scary because you have to nail it down. Yeah, same with pho. Pho is the exact same thing. And I see like people like dump. If you ever see people order pho and then just immediately dump sauce into the soup base, so just like dump hoisin straight into the soup base, you're ruining the pho because that soup base took like probably 72 hours to make, and it's probably like a giant family secret to that soup base that has been passed down from like hundreds of years of generations of family secret as this pho base. Same is going to be true for nuro min and ramen too. Ramen comes from Japanese food, nuro min from Chinese food, pho from Vietnamese food. All of those soup bases, they're like family generationally passed down. So when you see people just dump hot sauce into the soup base, that's just like, especially if they do it without tasting it, that's so rude. Like taste it first, because it's like this is like a family legacy when they make those soup bases. So yeah, that's another one. All of those soups, they're all on my to-do list, but I gotta make sure that I actually know how to do it before I tackle it. Yeah, instant pho it's not the same thing. That like. Yeah, lots of people just think it like pho and like ramen, nuro min, all of these things. It's just like, oh, it's a soup base plus some noodles and probably some beef or some kind of protein. But it's way more complex than that. What makes it complex are the things that you don't see. It's what's going into that broth. So in ramen, it would be the dashi broth. In nuro min, it's the beef broth. In pho, it's the pho stock. So super complicated things that are going in there. That I just don't know anything about. I don't know the first thing about any of those soup bases, so I have to learn how to do it first. You enjoy seeing people eat with chopsticks from a plate? Yeah. I have the exact same problem whenever I eat at like Japanese or Korean restaurants, because both of those cuisines, they don't do the rice bowls. You would never see them using rice bowls. Especially in Korean food, because like a traditional Korean chopstick, first of all, it's made of metal and it's flat. So you can't operate chopsticks the same way because they're flat. So I have a lot of trouble using chopsticks in those restaurants. Most of the time I just end up asking for a fork or eating with a spoon. Yeah. Cool. All right, thank you everyone for tuning in. Did I miss anything? I don't think I missed anything. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST with new recipes. Those are coming out every Friday. So if you haven't caught one of those recipes, they're every Friday over on the YouTube channel. So this coming Friday is going to be a recipe for a beef chow fun, which we're going to do a different approach to how to do a chow fun like this, which is, in my opinion, a beef chow fun is basically this. It's basically a pad see ew, but from Chinese food. So it's treated a little bit differently, but very, very similar approach because it's still using chow fun noodles. So those recipes, they all come up over on the YouTube channel every Friday, usually Friday morning-ish in the California time zone. So if you're looking for some of the things, the recipes for the things that I'm cooking, that all lives over there. Those recipe videos, they kind of move a little bit slower and kind of like talk through some of the decision making that goes behind some of these recipes, and like why I add certain stuff, why I forget some things, or why I leave certain things out, and like kind of the reason why some of those decisions are made in some of those recipes. So they're always a little bit interesting to check out if you've also already watched some of the streams, because you'll probably have watched me do something and I probably didn't explain it. That usually will come up in some of those recipe videos, so that's a fun place to be. In addition to all of the recipes, that's also where the live stream lives that's going on behind me. That live stream, it has a whole schedule of everything that I'm going to be cooking, so if you were watching over on YouTube, you would have known a couple weeks ago that I'd be cooking this, so that's a fun place to be. So we're working our way to 2,700 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you haven't checked that out yet, definitely bop over and give that a subscribe. Only if you're interested. Please don't subscribe if you're not interested. I don't know why people subscribe to the channel when they're not interested. I'm just going to end up spamming you. That's dumb. What else? This Friday is beef chow fun. Friday after that is going to be egg foo young. And then coming up after that is another dandan mian, which is like a sesame paste noodle dish that someone from the Oakland subreddit asked for. So we're going to take a look at all of those things. What else? There's a couple of different series that are coming up over on the YouTube channel. We have one that's really fun where I've been deconstructing a lot of like really Americanized Chinese foods, things like the Panda Express recipe or Panda Express menu, so a lot of General Tso's chicken, honey sesame chicken, kung pao chicken, Mongolian beef. The most recent one I think was Mongolian beef, stuff like that, and kind of taking a look at like what makes Chinese American food so American. What do those dishes look like if we don't add American qualities to it? So like, what is honey sesame chicken without like all of the honey? And kind of like take a look at what is that, and like how would it look if we tried to approach some of those dishes from like a traditional Chinese wok fry perspective. So giving those like dishes some of like the flavor that you would generally come across from like traditional Chinese food, but as like staying generally pretty true to the original intent of those really Americanized dishes. So stuff like that all lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out yet, definitely hop over and check that stuff out. Yeah, cool. Do I have a favorite pho restaurant? For pho, there's a good spot on Grand Avenue. I used to live across the street from there, or down the street from there. It's called Miss Saigon, which is literally every town has a Vietnamese restaurant called Miss Saigon. But it's really, they have really good pho. But pretty much you could throw, in California, you could throw a stone and find a good pho restaurant because they're everywhere. So, yeah, lots of good pho restaurants. What else? I think that's it. I don't think I missed anything. Let me know if I missed anything or if I missed any questions. I'll be here cleaning up dishes too, so yeah. Feel free to repeat yourself. I know I miss questions all the time. All right, we'll be back tomorrow making something. Oh, we're making soup, I think. I think we're doing hot and sour soup. Oh, not tomorrow, Thursday. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Oh, the last thing that I'll mention, I swear this is the last thing that I'll mention, is that I recently partnered with Chef, so I'm going to be starting cooking, delivering the food that I cook on stream. So if you happen to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can start ordering some of the food that I cook on stream. So it's most of the fried rices. This week we're making Westlake soup, so that's every Friday. If you want to order some of the things that I cook on stream, you can get that stuff every Friday. So this Friday is going to be Westlake soup plus a couple of different fried rices and scallion pancakes. So if you want, and you live in the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area, you could probably order something. So, all right, thanks everyone. I'll see you soon.
Slow. Come over and start up a conversation with just me, and trust me, I'll give it a chance. So now take my hand, stop and the man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. And now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Well, come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room. Now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. When we can, we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour and how your family's doing okay. And leaving, getting a taxi, kissing the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. And I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me. Say, boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. Push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too. I'm in love with your body. Last night you were in my room. Now my bedsheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.
Leave it with the babysitter, mama call